Have you with us tonight. And also like to introduce to you, if you don't already know, and certainly most of this market does, the Tulsa folks, and I hope those of you in Oklahoma City have had a chance to see ABC's Wide World of Sports recently. Becky Dixon, the newest addition to that program, and a Tulsan is our guest tonight here on Sportscene. Welcome back to Sportscene.
Well, it's good to be here. The first week I did Wide World of Sports, I said, gee, I can't remember the last time I was in a studio, but it was here, filling in for you when you were gone, because I'd been doing a lot of remote and doing a lot of events, so I hadn't been in a studio for a few months.
That's a small jump, isn't it? Sportscene, ABC's Wide World of Sports.
What did they say? One small step for mankind.
That is true. We were talking during the break about your schedule. It's been so hectic. You might outline to our viewers what this coming week has you, I guess, in Calgary on Thursday?
This week will be my most hectic. I go on Thursday to Calgary, Canada. The Olympics, the Winter Olympics, are exactly 1 year away, so we want to do a preview, and I believe like 99% of the venues are all completed, so, and they're opening a little Olympic festivity kickoff thing this weekend. And then we also want to take a look at the city of Calgary. You know, what is it and what are people going to be seeing there when they come to visit for the Olympics. So I'll be there shooting features Friday and host the show live from there on Saturday. Then Saturday night, get on a flight, go to Salt Lake City, then to Chicago. We can only get as far as Chicago, and then into New York Sunday morning, because we also have a Sunday show this week, so I'll be hosting the show then Sunday in the studio. And I hope to come back here then Sunday night.
John Madden could never keep up with you.
That's
no,
right. Yeah, good thing you're not afraid of flying.
But he probably doesn't have to make peanut butter sandwiches Monday morning like I do.
Well, and so I guess the real key is watch Sunday's show and see what she looks like after all that during the week. Those of you that did not catch her debut on Wide World of Sports, we have a replay here for you when Frank Gifford made the introduction. We're going to play that for you and then get Becky's reaction. We also invite you to give us a call and be a part of the show in Tulsa, 622-8600, and Mr. Around the State.
Bill, I believe that's 1-800-722-7595. What we will show you, though, is your first week. Was that 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks?
4.
4 weeks ago.
It was exactly 4 weeks, January 10th.
Becky Dixon's debut, ABC's Wide World of Sports with Frank Gifford.
And as we begin our new season, it's a pleasure for me to be joined by the newest member of ABC Sports, Becky Dixon. She's bright, she's intelligent, she's articulate, and like all of us here at ABC Sports, she has a true love and concern for sports. Welcome to Wide World, Becky.
Frank, I grew up watching this show, so to be a part of it now, well, it really is a dream come true for me. And of course, this year we will continue to travel to all parts of the world to bring you the best in sports television, the events, the stories, the personalities that have built the Wide World of Sports legacy. Frank and I will join you each week to present the stories as they unfold and examine the issues as they happen.
I bet you thought you'd never say those words. It's not so far from Tulsa after all. We're going to have a lot of fun. Today we'll preview tomorrow's NFL Conference Championship games.
I guess the first question I have, Becky, is was that live or was that taped live?
It was taped live. That was and Dean, I think you had asked me, was that whole show live? It was all except that part. We taped it like 2 minutes before we went on the air, so it was the same thing as live. That was the last chance we had.
Some people thought his comment to you about your rise from Tulsa was derogatory. You didn't take it that way.
No, not at all.
And it wasn't intended
but
that way.
I have had a couple of people say that. In fact, someone told me that they were talking about it one day on CNN, and I hope that Frank has not heard that because it would hurt him, I know, deeply, because he's a very nice, kind man, and he didn't mean that way at all. He just meant, and from what I had said, that, you know, I had grown up watching this show and I really never dreamed to be a part of it. And what he was just saying, well, it's not so far from Tulsa after all. He meant it in a very nice way.
Well, how much went into, particularly that first show, and exactly what you were to do, and does that change now on a week-to-week basis?
Every week is different. On Tuesday, for instance, I only found out today I was going to Calgary on Thursday. On Tuesday, the production staff, Kurt Gowdy Jr., who is the executive producer of Wide World of Sports, Ned Simon, who is the host producer, and all of the coordinating staff have a meeting and decide what they want to do that weekend. The basic events are set. For instance, we know we have boxing event or Holyfield this weekend. The basic events are set, but for instance, what do they want Frank and I to do? Do they want both of us in the studio? You know, what our part will be is not determined until Tuesday. So I didn't find out until today that I was going to Calgary on Thursday, and that's the way it is each week.
Becky, although you've been in the business a long time, this happened rather quickly, it seems to us. You met with Dennis Swanson, the new president at ABC, some half year ago. Apparently his thinking was, we need to get someone like Becky in immediately. What was the meeting with him like, and what was his thought process?
Actually, it was almost a year ago. It was the end of March. I met with him on the worst possible day I could probably have met with him. It was the day he announced that O.J. Simpson gone, Frank Broyles gone, Joe Namath gone, and the headlines screaming in New York were all these changes at ABC. I thought, oh, what a horrible day to have to meet with Dennis Swanson. If I get 10 minutes with this man, I'll be very lucky. But actually, we met about an hour and a half, and his thinking was that he wanted to hire women, he wanted to hire blacks, Hispanics. Sportscasters, he felt, at ABC had been pretty much into the same mold, and he wanted to, to broaden that base. And he had asked to see a tape of mine, and my agent sent him a tape, and then he wanted to meet with me, and so I went into New York. That was a year ago in March, and we decided, well, if ABC wants to talk to me, maybe NBC and CBS will also. So I saw NBC, Michael Wiseman, and George Veras from CBS also. But sometimes when you go in to meet someone, you have kind of an instant rapport, and you immediately like someone, and you have a very good feeling about them. That's the way I felt about Dennis Swanson. I think the way he felt about me. We liked each other as people. Not only did we respect each other's work. And so that was in March. About 3 weeks later, they called and said they had an event that they would like me to kind of audition on. That was the Super Run in Lake Tahoe. I did that in May, and then in June they said, we want to give you some more events to do, some more auditions, and which they never did. They called back and said, we want to sign you to a 5-year contract. We ended up negotiating a 3-year contract.
We talked about quick jump from Tulsa Cable. Well, for those that are watching Oklahoma City and don't know Becky's background, many, many years at KTUL, that's still a big jump. No Dallas, no Chicago in between. How did that come about, and did you ever expect that to happen like that? Did you think there was going to be an intermediate stop somewhere?
Everyone told me there would have to be, but I never really believed that. I've been very lucky. I mean, luck in any business, luck plays an important part, and I was very lucky. But actually, the work itself is not that different. These cameras are the same as they are in the ABC studio. I try not to stop to think, how many people are out there. The work is really not that much different, if any.
How much of it in your role is showbiz, and how much of it is sports knowledge? You mentioned the Hispanics, the blacks, the females. For aspiring young female journalists, how much is showbiz and how much is sports knowledge?
I think it all depends on what you're doing. What I'm doing with Wide World of Sports and in this host position, I'd say it's half and half. Now, if you're a commentator at a football game, it's obviously going to be very different. It all depends on, depends on what you're doing. But I'd say with what I'm doing as the host of Wide World, it's half and half.
So you try to keep up with the whole universe, spanning the universe. You try to keep up with all that.
Yeah, there are really no limitations, because we are doing some things differently that have not been done on Wide World of Sports before. They've had a host. They haven't for the past couple of years, but in the past, the host pretty much just did a few basketball scores, baseball scores in the summer maybe, and did promos for what was coming up the next day or whatever. We do a headline segment, what's happening in sports today, much as you do here. We do interviews, issues. Last week, Frank did an interview with Mark Breland, so we have, he had just fought the night before. I did an interview with Ray Flynn, the mayor of Boston, on violence in sports. He had an interesting proposal. His theory was that, if two players are fighting on the field, that the police are the ones who should come in and take care of it. So we kind of we do cover a wide spectrum.
Well, I'm glad to know ABC takes their format from us. I think that's what we're hearing, right?
Well, that's right. Just a real trendsetter around here, aren't we? All right, we're going to take a break. We'd love to have you get involved in the program. 622-8600 in Tulsa and around the state, 1-800-722-7595. Becky Dixon's our guest, and to the phones in just a minute. Welcome back to Sports Scene. We'll go to the telephone lines and visit with our guest, Becky Dixon, tonight.
I think she's excellent on Sports Scene because she gives me a sense that she knows what she's talking about, and I'm relaxed with her sportscasting. Could you compare your give me your opinion of her and tell me what you think you do best in making the mostly male audience be relaxed with a female sportscaster?
Good call. I would agree. She's one of our favorites, I know.
She's one of mine as well, and she's one of the few role models women have, young women have in that area. I think she is my favorite female sportscaster. She does a very good job. And I just read an article that she had written, or it was an article about her, and she's bitter because she hasn't been hired by one of the 3 major networks. I don't know why. I wonder if sometimes you can become closely related to, say, an ESPN or maybe a USA network, and maybe you're too close, because she is clearly seen as ESPN, and I know that sometimes happens. We'll say, for instance, in the Tulsa market, I know sometimes one of the stations might be reluctant to hire, say, someone from Channel 6 over to Channel 8 because they're so closely tied, and I wonder if maybe that's what's happened to her on ESPN. That's one theory I have, because I certainly think that she is very competent, and I think men certainly think that, I know women think she's credible, and I believe she's won over the male audience as well, which, as you guys know, can be a little harder to win over.
Well, what about 2 things, I guess, the caller brought up. What about the competition for your job? Was Gail Gardner among them? Did you have any idea?
I don't have any idea who was competing for this job. I know there were men and women, and I talked with Dennis Swanson. The first time I talked to him after I'd signed my contract was in Norman at the Oklahoma-UCLA game, and he said we considered a lot of men and women for this job, and that's all I know. I really don't know any specifics as far as who was competing for the job. And at that time, I really didn't know what I was going to be doing for them. They said, at that time, they said, you'll have a major role in Wide World of Sports, and you'll have a major role in the Olympics. But that was all they said, and I didn't know I'd be hosting Wide World of Sports.
Back to your calls. You're on with Becky Dixon.
Yeah, I had a question for you, Becky. When did you get started in sports, and how? Have you ever played in sports, or what brought about your interest?
I was raised on a ranch with 3 brothers, so that was probably where my first interest came. I played basketball and tennis in high school and college. Scored 40 points in one game, averaged 25.
You get those stats put on our computer.
I was taller than everyone else. That helped. I lived in Florida for 1 year after I graduated from the University of Tulsa, and there was a woman. She was the first woman sportscaster that I can ever recall seeing, and her name was Jane Chastain. I don't know if either of you remember. She worked briefly for CBS, but at that time she was working for a station in Miami, so I saw her then, and I started doing a feature on the Miami Dolphins. And she was the first woman I saw doing that, and I thought, what an interesting job, and why aren't there more women doing that? So when I first went into television, I wanted to go into sports. And Chris Lincoln at Channel 8 and Tom Goodgame gave me my first job in television sports. And at the time at Channel 8, that was in, that was 1979. There was Chris Lincoln, Bob Carpenter, Carl Archie, and myself. We had a huge sports staff. We were doing a lot of sports production at KTUL at that time, so I was doing a lot of events. We did basketball, football, horse racing, tennis, golf.
You brought the name Jane Chastain, made me think of it. She caught a lot of abuse when she first came on nationally from the predominant male audience, saying she doesn't belong on there. Certainly you won't have to face as much of that, but I would still think you would face some of that. Did you give that any thought, and do you, as you still walk in there, and I think the caller asked about making that male audience feel comfortable, is there anything you can do, anything special?
Well, I think the networks have gotten better at giving women a better role. I know I read that Jane Chastain said when she came to work at CBS, they put her on her first event was the Super Bowl, and they told her to sit in the booth and talk about what kind of hats the ladies at the game were wearing. Now, that's not Jane's fault, that's the network's fault, and I think the networks have certainly done a better job in putting women in positions where they can they can make everyone comfortable. I mean, that made Jane uncomfortable. I'm sure it would have made me uncomfortable if I'd seen it, and certainly none of the men, I don't think any of the men would have liked it. But I think the networks are making, I know at ABC they're making every effort to make it as comfortable a position for all the viewers. And in Wide World of Sports certainly is not a male-dominated audience. I would say it maybe we even have more female viewers because of our big events, our skating, gymnastics, and those kinds of events.
All right. Before we get back to the telephones, there was a piece done about Becky with CNN that we'd like to show. Why don't you set this up? Certainly you know more about it than we do, but I think it'll be interesting. How did this come about?
Well, this took place, I came in the first week I did Wide World of Sports. I came in to New York like on a Tuesday, and they had lots of interviews set up for me to kind of introduce me. And the press publicity man at ABC who was working with me said, CNN Sports is here. They're up on the 18th floor. They're all set up. They want to do an interview with you. So we walked in, and there was this beautiful blonde woman sitting there, and I thought, well, I've never seen her on CNN Sports. You know, I don't know who she is. Well, it was for Showbiz Today. So that's what this aired on. And the first question she asked me, and they didn't use it on this piece, but I'll just set it up by saying, the first question she asked me was, well, tell me, Becky, how do you get all the way from Tulsa, Oklahoma to 6th Avenue? And I said, lots of hard work. and that was it.
We have airplanes out there.
No, I wish I'd said the bus like everyone else.
All right, let's take a look at that.
Its viewers the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. This season, the Honored Sports Anthology series has unveiled a new look, with Frank Gifford and Becky Dixon as anchors. For Dixon, landing this assignment was a dream come true.
I'm getting to do everything. I'm getting to do features, which I love doing. I'm writing, doing live interviews, live reports,
and you're getting paid.
and I'm getting paid.
Becky Dixon has paid her dues, starting as a sports reporter in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Her advice for other female sports journalists?
Where should they start? At the bottom.
ABC is hoping the new team of Dixon and Gifford will score in the ratings. Frank Gifford has already won points with Becky.
I mean, I have chemistry just watching. There's a chemistry, I think almost anyone can say this just watching Frank Gifford on television. He's that warm, sensitive, caring person. And I've not talked to anyone who has not said Frank Gifford is the nicest man I've ever met.
Becky, you did just land a plum job. But if you could have any other job in the world, what would that be?
Maybe Monday Night Football. But to me, like I said, this is my dream.
Move over, fellas. Lauren Sidney, CNN, New York.
So, Monday Night Football. I'm sure a lot of people took that as, hey, that's pretty bold. You didn't mean it in that way, though, did you?
No. I don't know, maybe I did. The first, when I was telling you the first time I met Dennis Swanson was the day when they made all the announcements of the changes in Monday Night Football, and one of the questions he asked me, he said, well, what do you think you'd like to do for us? And I said, well, sounds like you need someone on Monday Night Football. So I've kept that as a recurring theme. Actually, I think there is a place for a woman on Monday Night Football for the very simple reason that it is a different audience than your Sunday afternoon football. It's prime time. The competition on Monday night is Cagney and Lacey, definitely a women's show, Kate and Allie. And I think in some place in there is a place, a role for a woman. I'm not saying as the play-by-play announcer, that's not what I meant. But I think something that would appeal to the women's audience would work on Monday night.
Start bucking for Frank's job.
Yeah, we'll see that report go down the tubes on Saturday. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll come back with a few more phone calls with our guest, Becky Dixon. Caller talking about the move to New York, or possibly. You just gave your travel schedule of Tulsa, Calgary, Chicago, New York, back to Tulsa in about a 3-day period. Is there any pressure from the network side to have you move to New York?
Not a great deal of pressure. I think ideally they would like for me to move to New York. It would be much easier on me, but I have 2 children, and I don't want to raise them in Manhattan. I think Tulsa is one of the most wonderful places you can raise children, and even though this is more difficult for me, they're my first concern, and it's much easier to raise them here, even though I'm not with them as much as if we were all in New York. But just they have such a great support group here. Their father is here. My parents are nearby. And I just think this is such a good place to raise children. ABC would like, you know, it's like almost any other business. You know, what they said was, if we see you in the halls every day, or, you know, if we can get your idea on this without having to pick up a telephone and call you, or things like that. But they're very, they've been very responsive to the needs of my children, and know that's my first priority. And so, no, there's not been a great deal of pressure.
Before we let you go, we almost forgot the ultimate question. What has happened to Frank Gifford's hair? I've been watching him 15 years, and it just seems like there's a different Frank Gifford. Seriously.
He has less of it?
Well, he does look different. I don't know what it is.
I think it's thinning a little, and it's also graying somewhat.
But he has been kind to you. I know you say he's happily married,
kind.
and he and his wife have spent time with you.
Yes. In fact, his wife went to college at Oral Roberts University. Kathy Lee Johnson, who many of you saw in Good Morning America, she used to fill in some on that, and she was the Good Morning America correspondent. But I didn't know that until I met her for the first time. We went out to lunch my first week in New York, and she said, well, I went to college at ORU, and I didn't know that.
Yet another lady time.
Yeah.
Well, we want to make sure we ask those in-depth questions, keep the critics off our tail end. Becky, thanks for your time this evening, and the best of luck at ABC.
Thanks.
Thanks, Becky.
Becky Dixon, our guest. We're going to take a brief time out. We'll come back. It's time to gear up for the Sports Scene quiz.